sports shoe, it's used in performance, everywhere, I mean, computing can be. And I think it's like with many other professions, kids, you know, they have like 5 professions everybody wants to become when you look at the research of what students' career interest is, and they're pretty much set by the end of elementary school year. So I think likewise in computing, we have a legacy of a quarter century to overcome, of not having very few women. I mean, the Marissa Mayer of Yahoo, of Meg White of Hewlett Packard, the Sherry Sandberg of Facebook, they're the exceptions, I mean, in that industry. When you go into gaming companies, when you go into convention, it's Electronic Entertainment Expo is happening at this very moment in Los Angeles. There are women, but they're all in marketing, they're not in production. And we just had this last fall the big Gamergate incident and the incident around GitHub where women were harassed, and this has been going on for years. So, I mean, why would we even want to send girls into those kind of cultures and communities? I mean, that's why I'm saying I think game design is great and we can design different games, but it's not the only pathway into computing, into coding.
One of the things I've been trying to do is, I've got a workshop called Drawing Kids into Mathematics, and I actually use turtle art. You could use, turtle art is a form of logo, it's very scratch-like, but the idea is to have kids create artwork out of that, and this was developed actually by Seymour's daughter, Artemis, and Brian Silverman. So I haven't got any results or know anything in terms of gender choices, but it just seems to me that it'd be a softer, more inviting entry.
That's that word, soft again. No, that's good. It's a good word.
Well, I have a strongly developed feminine side, so just saying.
As your colorful shirt illustrates. I mean, that's just my personal reaction, and I've worked for many years in computing, and I can understand, in computer science I can understand, but there are many different facets. I mean, it's not like the girls out there, they're in digital media arts, they don't go into computer science. You know, there are many peripheral professions. And I think we should turn our gaze away from computer science, engineer, programming, and look at what my colleague Mark Gustai calls end-user programming. And he says, you know, there's probably 1 million people who will become the system engineer programmers who design all the hard tech. And I mean, surely we need those. But there are, I mean, tens of millions of people who at some point in their life, professional career, whether they program spreadsheets or anything, whether they're in manufacturing and works at CNC machines, I mean, where at some point, I mean, they actually are getting involved in some programming and there's nothing there. All those people, they kind of just learn on their own, on the job. And that is really where I think the computational participation comes in, not for, I mean, the few select who decide to kind of study computer science and get a graduate degree. It's like in math, I mean, the fewest people study mathematics and become mathematicians. But, I mean, there's so many aspects, no matter whether you run a business or where, I mean, understanding of mathematics, economics are really critical, I mean, or whether it's kind of science. And so I think right now, unfortunately, the whole conversation has kind of become a little bit kind of too Silicon Valley infused because the jobs are there and that drives a lot of what people can kind of easily resonate. But I think the harder discussion for us is really to think about, you know, from a literacy perspective. And it's a political discussion too, like it's a political discussion on how we teach to read and write and what kids are reading in history and other places. But it's a discussion which talks about what it means to be educated in order to be functional and political, participatory, I mean, in the 21st century. that is a discussion, and I think coding needs to be part, I mean, you know, as one pathway. You know, there is CS Unplugged, you can do a lot of things which never involve the computer around algorithms and other part, which also very nicely connect into math instruction, because that's all about, I mean, algorithms as well.
Some thoughts on the gender issues in math research. There are some studies that are looking at why are women avoiding math or switching out of math. And, there are a couple of reasons that connect, I think, very much to some of the things that you're talking about. One is they switch out of math degrees or programs of study for community reasons, or they're more likely to be retained in a program of study if there's community support. So this idea of writing back, uploading your Scratch game or whatever it is, and having that community support is something that maybe we'll see as having a good impact on how females engage and participate, and the degree to which they're peripheral in their participation. The other interesting thing that's come out of some research is around motivations for career choices. And so there's some, it's kind of rough research, but suggests that there is a tendency for females to choose professions where they can see a social benefit. They're doing something to help, but they don't necessarily see mathematics as relevant to that profession. And that's part and parcel to how they're seeing mathematics, not to the relevance. And so when I was listening to you talk about the games, the girls weren't so interested in games, and thinking about myself and other girls I know in math and outside of math, well, I don't think I'd be that interested in making a game either, but maybe I would be interested in making an app that would help facilitate hospital functionality somehow, I don't know. But maybe we're thinking too in a limited way about what gaming could be.
There are many examples. If you take just the hackathons, which are also another male bastion, I mean, where there's mostly just guys. And, I mean, at Penn Ups, they were joking, there are some, you know, it was actually started by a women's group to bring in more women into computing. It's been completely subverted now. It's 80% male who come, and they were, you know, joking around of changing all the restrooms, you know, so. But there are like hackathons for the social good, you know, and I think there are many examples. I think also around privacy. I know this is a topic which in Europe is very much stronger than in North America. And for example, what people do in Germany, the privacy laws are much more stringent. And one of the political appointees actually released all his mobile phone records of a year because he got access to it because of a law from the phone company. And they're using it in history class to study on how you can do filtering mechanisms to identify patterns, what you can say about that person. I mean, by just having those indicators, the students didn't know that it was this particular person. And it was very interesting to hear. So there you have a nice combination of something which is really relevant in history, and in Germany in particular, with the Nazi regime, who, because of the kind of nice administrative features, was actually able to track down a lot of people. But right now also what privacy online actually means. And that is a really big topic on how, with very few indicators, your privacy is actually completely transparent online. I mean, you need only very few markers to nail down somebody based on a data set. But you will never understand that unless you are able, to at least at some point to experiment with these algorithms in a kind of constrained data set and try out what that means. And then I think you can actually engage in this discussion, which is seemingly kind of happening on a big stratosphere with big companies like Facebook, who collect all kinds of data and run experiments on what you're doing. And what say you have, does anybody ever read those end user license agreements? I know we all just click I agree. But in the end, we're actually conceding some of our rights to companies. And there will be moments when that will become really critical. When we need to understand what we concede and why that actually is a big deal or why it shouldn't be a big deal. I don't think many of us, unless you're an expert, even have a sense on what's kind of happening there. But I think those are topic areas where you move out of the kind of standard domains of games, which, by the way, you can have that great discussion too. Who owns all the stuff which people design in games? You know, copyright law. You know, is it the users who are designing it? Is a company on which platform that happens? I mean, who makes those decisions? But we have examples for that. We just have thought very narrowly because people in computer science happen just to be a very particular breed, very interested in just very few things which are not broadly shared. And I think that's where computer science education, not just on the college level, but also in K-12, now really needs to do the hard work in designing the curriculum. I would argue in mathematics education and science education, language arts, we have done that hard work over the last 20 years. You know, the kind of texts which are being read. It's not just Shakespeare. Would it be, okay, I'm not, native English speaker, so Shakespeare for me, I have not that love affair with, but, you know, I come from Germany, so Goethe and Schiller, okay. You know, but wouldn't it be a sad world if it just would be Shakespeare? You know, we have so much rich literature, and I think likewise in science, you know, there's a whole world, like with encoding, we need, many examples, and we need to figure out ways on how to introduce them. Because that takes skill. No matter what Gary Stager says, you know, he runs wonderful workshops. Those are designed instructional experiences, even if you let people design what they seemingly think they want, because you want them to have rich experiences to make a point. Oh, it's insider joke. Everybody who knows Gary Stager knows exactly what he's
a brilliant guy who's written a book along with his partner Sylvia Martinez called Invent to Learn. So, you know, it's a great maker book. So
it's a great book for teachers who want to do scratch, makey, all of these things, and it's written very much for teachers, for people who want to be in a classroom, who want a project, and also he does constructionism pure. I work with Seymour too. I'm much more applied. I have worked in a lot of classrooms, and I understand that there need to be structures. That we need to think very carefully on how Scratch is a great example. It's not just a programming tool. Everything you see there, every color, we agonized over. Even the cat looked different before. I think it has a more male stance now. I lost that battle, but no, but all of the, and that's why it's not open source. You know, we had a lot of arguments because we designed all the pieces where everything is, because we designed it for a computer clubhouse. We didn't design it for classroom, for kids, because we wanted to facilitate certain entrances and interactions. And I don't think that's bad. Makey is designed. It creates an overlay over the Arduino. And it does it in a very interesting way because you can use it without any programming. But then you can flip it around and you can actually program it. That's a designed artifact. I think there's some educational thinking about affordances. Affordances in the sense somebody who starts out maybe doesn't want to do any programming, but he or she wants to have some functionality. But then you want to open the door also to the other opportunities. You don't want to close them.
See, the discussion becomes so bipolar, so dichotomous so quickly, it drives me quite crazy, because it's not either instructionism or constructionism or whatever, because you're looking at a very complex interaction.
Yeah, but it's mostly instructionism. Outside
Well, people are saying, oh, we've got to give students agency. That's a big rant on, you see, how many tweets a day you see on that in your educational communities? It's just not that simple. It's not a simple, yes, you give them agency or no, you don't. that's where I have challenge. And by the way, with agency, they simply mean give them power. They don't even speak about the cognitive attributes, in enhancing cognitive attributes of kids to help them be more metacognitive or have the skills so they can exercise that agency.
But I think it's also, I mean, a reaction in particular in the United States against the whole teaching to the test.
Yeah,
so people, you revert into this kind of
but it's dangerous.
polar opposite to make a point without, it's like reading instruction now. Is it phonics or a whole language?
Yeah.
And we all know, I mean, the research says good reading teachers combine both based on where the students are. It's neither the one nor the other. But there's also big textbook publisher interest involved who are very interested in that one piece. There's also a lot of teachers, at least in the United States, who come with any, who teach on emergency credential, who have never learned how to teach reading, and for them maybe open court is, it's like a Bible when you hold the textbook open. But for them, I think in the beginning, it's at least a starting point. I mean, to help kids learn to read. It probably gets, as we know, very boring over time if you have to just follow the script and you can't actually react to where the kids are and work with this. So I mean, I think there are explanations for some of those kind of bipolar or bifurcated discussions we have.
I get it, I understand.
And I think with coding it's
really
happening now too, I can see it. I mean, code.org is pushing the kind of, fast food way of kind of teacher development, and we all know what it takes, for professional practice to change. It's not like rocket science. I mean, there's a lot of evidence and examples out there, so you can't do the shortcuts.
Maybe one more question?
One last big question. I want to hear about the course you're designing. I think that's very exciting. I mean, it's a big shift. 10 years ago, I was the academic head of the teacher education program at UCLA, a program which is very much geared towards social justice, working in LA Unified, second largest school district. And I did that, and man, I mean, if you read those evaluations, I think these students wanted to lynch me personally.
Because it's a concern.
How could I ask them to program something? And it was very striking, when I went in a classroom and I asked kids to program something, they were all very happy doing it, they're kind of, doing it. Here you had teachers, and I thought, I mean, Houston, we have a problem here, we have the kids who I know are interested in doing this, but if we can't get the teachers on board and to feel comfortable with the notion that they really don't know and can't handle everything, because in any programming class there will all be somebody coming up with something which you can't fix right away. I mean, that is just the nature of the beast, and there's so much development happening. I mean, it's not static. Very uncomfortable position for somebody who has never kind of worked with this. So I think actually it's a right step in the right direction. We need to start in pre-service, in teacher education, that the first experiences, like the students in elementary school, you need to make it. It's a requirement of any teacher I work with. You have to make your own electronic textile. You cannot even participate in a class if you don't understand what it takes to make these things and where things can go wrong, and they will go wrong. You don't even need to build this in.
We had Canadian Council of Academies at the end of April published an expert panelist report on STEM skills, what our young population has and what they need. And it resonates very well with a lot of the things that I think you've been saying. And so I'm really excited because it feels like we're making good steps forward. One of the things that they talked about in this report, they were looking at skills and how do our students do skills-wise algorithms and that sort of thing. And they concluded that while there's room for improvement, as always, actually the skills are pretty good. And they described sort of two kinds of people, I and T. And apparently we have a lot of I's, which are procedurally skilled, technical skills, strength in that area. But what we need are more T's. People with those technical skills, but then also with the breadth, depth, and let's say creativity to be more innovative, to apply these technical skills to areas that they might not have seen before. And when you talk about the possibilities of bringing these coding experiments or activities into K-12, then I see really good opportunity to get those, sort of that diversity, so that computer science isn't only of and for computer scientists. Not a
That's
question,
more a
but
comment than a question.
Do you agree?
Very good. No, yes.
It's an easy question.
No, I, you know, number one, it can't hurt. And I think it's all about, I mean, the citizenship and being able to make informed decisions. I don't think everybody should become a computer scientist and programmer. But unless you have had some experiences, how would you be able, and if it's all based on those weird conceptions, you know, I can't make game design, this is not for me, I'm not part. And of course the girls aren't wrong, because we know those cultures are not very welcoming. You know, if we don't kind of provide, I mean, these openings and these opportunities, then it's never going to change. That's going to be a very sad story. I mean, if all the technologies in the world are designed by a very small group of people, which, you know, as well attentioned as it may be, will never realize, I mean, all the possibilities, both in a positive as well as in a negative way.
I just have a comment,
Yeah.
and I don't know what the schools are like in the US. Speaking just for the schools that I know in Durham, if I did not have the opportunity to work with UOIT, I would know nothing about Scratch. I would know nothing about Arduinos. And part of that, when I approached my admin and said, I'm working with UOIT, we're going to be working with Arduinos, they had never heard of them. So it's wonderful to have all of this expertise, but it doesn't seem to filter down to the school boards. And there may be some school boards, there may be some people within the school board who are tech savvy. I knew the gentleman who was our tech go-to guy, and I said to him, I'm working with Arduinos. He didn't know what they were. And when he mentioned it to a high school teacher, the high school teacher got very excited and wanted to have Arduinos. Where did you get them? I want to know where to order them. And Jeanette gave me the information, I gave it to him, and you know what? I don't know whether his budget allowed him to purchase the Arduinos.
That's another, I think you're actually raising an important point, which I heard also. I mean, how accessible are all these things, you know? I mean, you know, we're here in a community where we know, but I know low-income people who don't come from the same backgrounds,
Yeah.
who don't have the same access to they actually don't naturally find Scratch, you know, which actually happens to be free of charge because it was, you know, paid for by your tax dollars at work, and it has a lot of rich Wall Street sponsors right now, about the diversity of content and access. Big topic. I think, you know, we're talking a lot about teachers and students, but we need administrators as well as curriculum. We have actually, you know, we haven't done any research in the last, in the United States, there was maybe 20 of us in K-12. That is not, I mean, a foundation. You know, people ask for studies. I said all the stuff happened like in the 80s, you know, we have large number. We don't have anything. We don't have any curriculum. You know, curriculum is not just a collection of activities. I have a lot of startups now who contact me who want to build coding curriculum, and I always try to explain to them that it's not just a collection of programming activities, you know, that it's a little bit more, and that what goes into curriculum, we haven't done the work.
Because the only expectation, well, one of the only expectations is can your students connect the what they've learned to real world applications? So I open up my curriculum document and I look and I go, oh, my program that I designed covers this, and that one. And that's how I work to make sure that I cover expectations.
No, I'm just itching, I'm biting, you know.
I can see.
Yeah, because we have, in Ontario, a subject association that reports to, well, it's like any other subject association, like STAY or whatever, called ECHO, Education Reading Organization of Ontario. It's been around since 1980. We have Ontario Teachers Federation, which runs OTF Connects workshops online. And OTF also runs face-to-face workshops in summer institutes on various technology-based kinds of stuff. The Ministry of Education, I'm not sure this is publicly known, but they are now working on a coding and programming / curriculum.
Okay.
Well, I wouldn't say curriculum, resources at least. I'm not sure about curriculum at
That's a
this point.
pre-step, you know.
Yeah, well, I'm being, like you, I'm saying honestly, if you start creating a scope and sequence, I'm gonna have clarity. But one of the things, so you don't hear about these things, because you're so busy in your classroom, right? But I would encourage you to gain an online presence and a professional learning network, or PLN, through Facebook, through Twitter, through whatever. Because not that you have to be there all the time, but at least the stuff's streaming by, and you'll see stuff that you may not otherwise see. Because this stuff has existed since the 80s. It's not new. It's just a matter of you don't hear about it, because if you wait for the stuff to filter down through a system that controls information, you may not get that information.
Become a member of the Computer Science Teacher Association, it's free.
CST.
It's online, they have a weekly newsletter, they have a yearly, they have meetings and workshops, they're international, it's actually really interesting. I looked them up, there wasn't anything on Canada, so there's a whole void to fill. But they have been very active, and don't believe it's any better in the United States. The private schools, because they have the resources, they set up maker studios, Fab Lab, the 3D printers, the bane of our existence, but well,
It's like a smartboard.
yeah, well, it's a symbol. But so don't think it's that much different, It's actually very interesting. I hope some sociologists will kind of study, on how you kind of promote, the rollout of something like this. And I think we have a very often singular perspective, not realizing that it really needs to be a network of activities. And I think code.org is also realizing this. Hadi Patovi, has a lot of money in his pocket, and he is even realizing, it's just a drop in the bucket if he really wants to make a large change in the United States, because it's of such a scale. And it's not just a scale, there's so many moving parts, from the curriculum, from the teachers, from schools of education, from, I think, thank you, also saying that those materials need to become more affordable. They are too expensive, so they don't stay just with those kids where parents and communities have the resources to bring, to purchase them and also introduce them. So that all needs to come together with the curriculum in order to make that work.
Stuff was a lot cheaper before this all became very popular in recent years, because there used to be crickets. The crickets were inexpensive. Some of the earlier stuff before this fad all hit. Well, hit again.
But also, there's development in this. There's opportunity. Because these things are designed on the screen as well as tangible. If you want to make them, as kind of learning opportunities. They're not just stuff that the engineers use, but if we really want to think about broad scale annotation, I think the knowledge, the skill, and the insights which teachers have and people who work with students is really crucial in the development in order to make them customized and appropriate for K to 12. I want to add on a more positive note, so we're not all kind of in the doom and gloom. It's, you know, it's an exciting time period. I mean, come on, for 20 years I was on the sidelines. I was not allowed to use the word programming. Everybody would leave the room right away. Now it's a sexy hot topic. So I think it's a really interesting, it's an interesting moment full of important, you know, not one of those meaningless battles, but I think one which touches every